Irsad was alone. He was also dead and lost and missing an arm, but that wasn't the problem. For as long as he could remember, he had always had a friend by his side. Someone to boss him around. Someone to come up with the schemes. And now there was no one. He wandered the underground for months before finding his way back up to the surface. And then he kept wandering through the mountains until he stumbled into an elven forest retreat called Glitter Parched, where a wild boar man stepped out to meet the miserable meanderer.
Ho there, my wretched friend.
Eh?
Welcome to our peaceful glade. I am called Niri. What tidings of the outside world could possibly bring to our fair forest such a fetid fellow as yourself?
Eh?
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 I see. You've met with a terrible fate, haven't you? Clearly you have fallen prey to the evils that prowl the hills of Velvet to our south. The necromancers at Burnpost and their vile creations are surely to blame for this.
Eh?
The malodorous machinations of those menacing murderers have multiplied beyond measure. Long have we sat by as countless human settlements have fallen victim to the goblins and undead. Mostly because we didn't care. But now their corruption has spread so far and so wide as to take the lives and deaths of our dear little kobolds. This shall not stand. It is fortunate that you find yourself in my presence, young lad, for I have trained my entire life in the ancient dwarven art of weaponless fighting. Tis at dur. Pa?
Yes, son?
I am departing on a quest to rid these lands of the evils that inhabit them.
Okay, son. Be sure to take your rhino.
Oh, yes. Osime! Dearest friend, will you join me on my noble mission to lay waste to our many foes, and be ever at my side through thick and thin? And what of you, my lonesome lizard? You seem the strapping sort, aside from the missing arm. And the being dead. But that doesn't seem to be slowing you down any. Would you like to accompany me and my rhinoceros in our pursuit of pestilence? I would warn you of the danger, but I'm sure you're already quite aware.
And what was Irsad going to say? No thank you. I'm not really interested in another co-conspirator relationship right now. Of course not. And so Niri, Osime, and Irsad traveled south, first stopping by Runditch, a fortress originally built by kobolds, but now occupied by goblins.
Be on your guard, my friend. They shouldn't attack without provocation, but you never know what might set them off.
The trio passed by the trade depot and spotted an unusual sight. A human, but not a human. A monster, but not a monster. A being born of evil enterprise. Many years ago, the necromancers of Burnpost captured and destroyed the human town of Lime Rhythm. They murdered as many residents as they could, and then performed horrible experiments on the bodies. The results were these. Human-ish creatures with 3 eyes and 3 tails. They lived and died and loved and lost and in fact did most things in much the same way as the humans they were built from. Just, green. Presently, this fort's population of Lime Rhythm soldiers was about to participate in one of humanity's most cherished pastimes. Revolution. As our heroes descended down to the living quarters, they couldn't help but notice all the goblins running in the opposite direction. Except for the dead ones, of course. There were several humans down here too, apparently helping out with the effort to overthrow the occupiers. They found a bar with a handful of the fort's new owners, soon emptied of its goblins.
Oh, well met, my good chaps. How goes the insurrection?
Death is all around us. It is truly horrifying.
Ha ha, yes, well done.
Irsad rummaged through some gear on the ground, and then they were off. All these goblins were already running for the hills, and most of them were quite well armed. So they headed further south through the hills of Velvet until they reached the dark goblin pits of Poison Nobles. These were the kinds of places that goblins built for themselves when they weren't occupying other people's towns and fortresses. They were also the kinds of places where you're more likely to find, say, a cheesemaker goblin, as opposed to, say, a hammer goblin. This made it a lot easier to walk up to one and punch them in the face. Hey, what are you doing here?
Delivering justice!
Niri wasn't exaggerating when he said he trained his entire life for this. He had mostly just practiced against trees, but the principles were the same. The goblins just moved a little faster.
Stot abod sutan! Hi-ya!
Niri punched his way through towers and trenches until they reached the pits themselves. Here the goblins dug their little bedrooms and carved tunnels between massive subterranean chambers, complete with pits to the underworld. They milled about in the open spaces as Niri punched them to death, one by one.
Mesopodo cab!
Osime charged, Irsad bashed. Together, they made short work of the residents of this stronghold. From there, they headed northwest and reached one of the few settlements still controlled by humans, a castle called Sister Practiced. Inside, they found a baron of familiar form, except not quite the same as before. This was a Nakamzathid soldier, a being born of a different experiment in a different town by a different group of necromancers. The actual differences are mostly academic, but these ones had wings, so that's pretty cool.
Greetings, noble night creature. I am Niri.
Hello, Niri. I am Baron Octosh.
My companions and I are on a mission to purge these lands of its many evils. Allow me to pledge myself to you, such that you may direct my righteous fury.
Whoa, this is all kind of sudden.
I have slain upwards of 30 goblins with nothing but my bare hands, boar hands, in all but the last 2 days.
Yeah, that's probably impressive. You are now my hearth person. Your first mission is to slay Lorik Greaterfind. Speak with a spearwoman outside, and she will guide you to the creature's lair.
I will not fail you.
They exited the keep and found the spearwoman.
Hello, human. I am Niri.
Hello, Boarman. I am Kajeth.
I am told that you will be able to help us locate Lorik Greaterfind, whom we have been charged with dispatching.
You're hunting the night troll? Where is your weapon?
I have no need for manufactured trinkets and baubles. I will claim my every foe with naught but my empty fists.
And your armor is wood?
Chestnut and mahogany, yes.
It's very pretty, but that monster is just going to bite you in half.
Never to fear. I am quite adept in the precepts of dodging and evasion.
You should listen to your friend. We are hard-pressed for armor these days, but I know a spot where some spare gear can be found. Niri reluctantly agreed, and Kajeth led the group northwest along the coast until they arrived at Weighted Tome, an ancient human tomb.
We are grave robbing?
Yeah, you're about human size. There should be something in there that fits you.
Surely we can find a less sacrilegious source of supplies.
Meh. Irsad entered the tomb without waiting for the others to come to an agreement. Climbing up the stairs, he found, well, a tomb. At the end of the hall was a doorway with a trap hidden under a bag. He squeezed through the trap without setting it off and continued through the door. The hallway beyond was lined with human skeletons, and the passage ended in a small room with some empty pedestals. The chamber below held nothing but another trap. Unimpressed, Irsad headed back out the way he came. Only this time he heard movement coming from a nearby stair. He spotted a figure, something covered in rags, and then an instant later he was surrounded. The skeletons all stood as one, responding to the slightest flick of the wrist from the ancient mummy.
Arise!
Irsad waited for the humans to make a move, but they simply stared at the kobold.
What are you waiting for? Kill him! Well then kill him again!
The skeletons did no such thing, though this wasn't out of any kind of kinship or respect or anything. For whatever reason, the mindless undead never really bothered to interact with other dead things. It's probably just, like, what's the point, you know? Those rarer undead, however, those who retained some semblance of their faculties, like Irsad, and like the mummy, they seemed to be more at liberty to choose their friends and enemies. Irsad charged the mummy.
Help me, you idiots!
The others heard the commotion from below.
Never to fear, young lad. We're on our way to aid you.
Niri and Osime rushed up the stairs and were immediately confronted by a hallway filled with animated skeletons.
Blast! We'll have to fight our way through.
They were forced to punch and gore as fast as they could, or else be completely overwhelmed. At the far end of the hallway, Irsad tussled with the mummy as the skeletons filtered by. Niri's blows dislodged various body parts, but each time the mummy would make more gestures with his hands and create new animated abominations from the severed limbs. Irsad attempted a move that he had watched Niri perform dozens of times. He waited until the mummy threw a punch, and then he countered with his own punch aimed directly at the mummy's fist. The mummy's desiccated hand popped off and fell to the ground. The mummy proceeded to show exactly how much he cared about this by gesturing with his other hand and animating the severed one. Irsad responded by wrestling the mummy to the ground, pulling out an axe he looted from somewhere, and chopping off the mummy's head. That probably should have been his first move, honestly. Towards the entrance, Niri and Osime were surrounded. Skeletons piled onto the rhinoceros faster than Niri could punch them off. But with the mummy no longer gesturing, there wouldn't be any new animated body parts. Irsad hacked the skeletons apart from behind, greatly aided by the fact that they still seemed to disregard his existence entirely.
Excellent work, my friend. What a dreadful place this is. Did you locate any armor, perchance? I thought as much. Well, at least we managed to dispatch the evil that dwelled here. Let us depart.
Oh, cool, you survived. From there, they traveled further along the coast, paying a visit to each of the settlements they passed by in search for any gear they could find. They found a town with some goblins, a hamlet with some goblins, a camp with some humans, a town with some humans, another hamlet with some goblins, and finally some goblin pits with even more goblins. Along the way, Niri slowly assembled a patchwork of metal armor, and Irsad grabbed as many weapons as he could fit on his back.
There, now I have a helmet and everything. Are you satisfied?
Yeah, good enough.
It hurts my snout.
And so they traveled back north to a clearing not far from the castle where they began. Then they searched the nearby fields until they found some unusual tracks, and followed them until they found a pair of unusual creatures. Lurid Greater Find, the Dark Monster Spouse, and her spouse, Nula Tomb Cavern, the Dark Monster. These were of a variety of evil that occurred more naturally in the world. That is, if you can call something that doesn't eat, drink, breathe, or sleep natural. They also felt no pain, couldn't be stunned, and would never get tired of trying to bite you in half.
Steel yourselves, my friends. Our foes are before us.
Irsad leapt off Osimi's back and rushed headlong at the pair. He swung his axe and dodged their slashes, but nothing really connected. The dark monster charged and knocked Irsad to the ground, then gored him in the head through a steel helm. Likely a fatal wound for someone who had to worry about that sort of thing. You got this! But Irsad merely focused on the task at hand. When Lurit grabbed him, he responded with a spear, striking her in the head and lodging the weapon in the wound. Then Osime charged and knocked Lurit away. Niri jumped to the ground, and together the three of them slowly overwhelmed the evil creature. Irsad finally connected his axe with her head and struck her down. That just left the dark monster, and Irsad didn't hesitate. He swung a hammer at its leg, then thrust a spear through its head, and then his body fell to the ground. Wow, good job, team.
Indeed. Well done, my little friend. Now all we must do is return the corpse of our quarry to the Baron.
They returned to the castle and deposited the dark monster spouse's corpse onto the floor of the keep.
Hello, Baron. I have brought to you the corpse of Lurit Greaterfind, the dark monster spouse.
Hello, Niri. Wow, that's gross.
We have additionally slain the dark monster spouse's spouse as well. But these things are heavy, so I only brought back the one.
Well done. Would you like another quest?
Nay, my good Baron. I believe it is time for us to direct our attention to the primary source of evil in these lands. I have laid my sights on the Tower of Burnpost, and I intend to root every last one of these insidious necromancers out of their little den of debauchery.
Okay, good luck. Have fun. And so Niri, Osime, and Irsad found themselves at the edges of Burnpost, with the necromancer's giant stone tower just out of sight.
All right, my friends. The necromancer's lair lies just ahead. I know not what lies inside, but I know we must face it head-on if these lands are ever to be free of this blight. We must conquer this tower and rid this land of its every evil. What's that, Dad? You're saying that most undead things refuse to attack you? So you could just effortlessly sneak into the tower? And quietly dispatch the necromancers on your own? Well, when you put it so eloquently.
Irsad forged ahead on his own. He was expecting something much like the human tomb. Instead, he found a couple of zombies, several of those experiments from Lime Rhythm, and an intelligent undead of a kind he hadn't seen before. As expected, nobody seemed to notice Irsad walking in through the doorway. At least, until the undead kobold said hi. The kobold pointed an accusatory finger at Irsad and unleashed a peculiar sort of magic on the interloper. Irsad's entire body was instantly covered in blisters, and he felt sick to his stomach, which was strange because he hadn't felt anything at all since that time he died and got turned into a zombie. Irsad ducked out of the building before he was surrounded and ran around the tower, trying to lure the mob outside so he could sneak back in unseen. Instead, when he circled back around to the entrance, he found a scene of absolute chaos. Several more of the intelligent undead were fighting the green creations, locked in a savage melee the cause of which can only be guessed at. Maybe Irsad just had an air about him that made others want to rise up against their oppressors. But whatever the actual context of this conflict was, the result was the same. Irsad now needed to get across an active battlefield where both sides wanted him dead. More dead than he already was. Nobody on the ground floor was an actual necromancer, so Irsad made for the stairs, searching for anyone who could be considered in charge of things. The undead and the experiments were mostly focused on each other, but that didn't mean they couldn't spare a moment to swing a punch as Irsad passed by. His flesh was constantly breaking out into blisters as strange blighted magic was flung his way, and he couldn't help but wonder how awful it would have felt if he was still alive. Up these stairs he found a scroll, up these he found a book, up these he found a dead gorlak. Downstairs, the experiment seemed to be overpowering the zombies, but that didn't actually help Irsad's progress at all. He climbed the final set of stairs and passed through a narrow hallway. Nothing here except... Wait, what is that? No, not the zombie kobold. That thing. A chunk of limonite sitting on a table. Memories from a lifetime ago seeped back into Irsad's rotting mind. It wasn't very shiny. It had words on it. It seemed important. He truly had no idea what this thing was. All he knew was that he had to take it and get it far away from here. Irsad shoved the slab in his backpack and made his way back down the hallway, only to find himself face to face with a dwarven necromancer.
Oh, hello, kobold.
Ha
ha! You said it, little guy.
The dwarf either didn't recognize that Irsad wasn't one of his own creations, or he didn't care. He also didn't seem too concerned about the carnage downstairs, and just continued down the hallway. Irsad didn't press his luck. The population of this tower's kinda dead evil things had already plummeted, plus he was making off with their probably important rock. So instead of confronting the necromancer, Irsad followed what was left of his gut instinct. He turned around, climbed down the stairs, and ran away as fast as he possibly could. He quickly made it out the entrance, but was followed by a lime rhythm soldier. Running in a panic, weighed down by a mysterious rock in his backpack, his pursuer gaining and overtaking him, this, too, was sounding familiar. Except, this time he wasn't panicking. In fact, this time, he felt nothing at all. Irsad turned to face the soldier, bashed him in the head with a warhammer, and killed him instantly. He returned to the running away part of his plan, but then an undead elf caught up and started pointing. He tried to keep his distance, he really did, but it was ultimately the trusty hammer to the head trick that put an end to it. He returned to where he had parted with Niri and Osime.
Welcome back, lad. I had started to fear for the worst. Have you turned the entirety of that terrible tower to a tumble of trash? Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm. What you say?
Irsad pulled the slab of limonite from his backpack.
Well, there are at least 6 words on this thing, so it's too complicated to get into now. But what do you suggest we do with the thing, lad? Away? Just anywhere? Well, if this has anything to do with the powers of necromancers, then getting it far away from here will surely be a boon to all living beings. I've heard your people have started a new fortress far to our east. Jaguar something. No, wait, leopards? No, and get this, it's inside a volcano.
And so Niri, Irsad, and Osime found their way to leopard something and introduced themselves to one of the guards.
Greetings, noble kobold. We have ventured far and wide and made it our mission to stand against evil in all its forms.
Hello, Boarman. Praise Rivers.
Yes, quite. Recently we've obtained an object of terrible power and seek a stronghold that can keep it safe from those who would wield it against others.
Oh, that? You can put it in the basement with the other one.
The other one?
Indeed, the other one. They brought the slab down to the treasure pit, and sure enough, there it was. Another slab. Made of a different substance, and probably containing different words, but undeniably the same.
Well, lad, I think we brought it to the right place. And it certainly seems secure enough. Did you see that labyrinth going up out front? What do you say we settle here for a bit and help keep an eye on these evil artifacts?
And thus another adventure met its conclusion at Leopardbends. And of course our little hole in the ground had been growing this whole time. The kobolds were hard at work building a labyrinth at the front gate using nothing but green glass. It would be a while before it was finished, but the traps were already quite lethal. They also cut a massive notch into the mountainside and started a tree farm at the bottom. They were slowly building a roof over their little arboretum out of clear glass so that they could have access to all their trees without leaving the security of the fortress. This would also take a while to complete. Turns out that's a lot of glass. Of course, glass was plentiful in Leopardbends. They harnessed the power of the volcano to power their furnaces and kilns. Busy kobolds toiled away making an endless stream of glass blocks, and slowly the walls grew. And what of our growing cast of colorful characters? They were also here, toiling away. Srao slowly shifted her focus to more academic pursuits, and Irsi was busy carving increasingly intricate designs into the walls. There was also a trio of ranchers that rolled in with a couple hundred cave blobs and said, "We live here now," and no one had a good reason to tell them no. So now there were a bunch of cave blobs guarding the main entrance at all times. And then there's the matter of this other trio. The kobold and the dwarf were quickly put to work. Silsa joined the militia, and Solon grabbed a pick and happily dug every hole the kobolds asked for. The gorlak, however. The gorlak. The necromancer. Well, she was put in a cell, locked in a makeshift chamber while the kobolds figured out what to do with her. Sitting on the bare floor with nothing to keep her company except the rotting corpse of her dead horse, never eating, never sleeping, talking to herself in the darkness, wondering if anyone would ever open the door.
I'm a very, very important person.
Yeah, she's doing fine. Thank you for watching, and a big thank you to Crumpet Sounds for being willing to record 10 full minutes of dialogue for this episode. He also makes great Dwarf Fortress content here on YouTube, and if you made it to the end of this video, then I think you will appreciate what he's been up to. And of course, thank you again to Radu and the Smitchell. These videos would be much less interesting without the help of my friends, because you've definitely heard all of my voices by now. And if you'd like your voice to be heard, I think there's some noisy buttons down below for you to push.